Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Holy Trinity Church. Thank you for joining us for morning prayer on this fifth Sunday of Pentecost. My name is Gordon Blue, and I'm going to open today with this reflection, which was written in the century before Jesus was born. It's from the book called The Wisdom of Solomon. God did not make death, and he does not delight in the death of the living. For he created all things so that they might exist. The generative forces of the world are wholesome. Last week, we read about Jesus crossing the Sea of Galilee. And today we take up the reading as Jesus has returned from across that lake. A great crowd is gathered around him. Among the people in the crowd were two whose lives are touched by Jesus. These two are Jairus, a leader of the synagogue, and an unnamed woman. Jairus confronts Jesus face to face. He's there on behalf of his daughter. The woman approaches Jesus by stealth. And their stories are nested together in a way that protects and summons the deep mystery of women's reproductive powers. The nest is made of parallel layers of their lives, carefully placed in similar language. Surrounding this mystery are cultural rights and responsibilities that govern the lives of women. And this was a culture that is quite different than ours, and yet, as we shall see, it may be quite similar in some disturbing ways. Here are some of the layered elements of the story. Jairus came looking for Jesus, and when he saw him, fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him. So Jesus went with him. The woman had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. For she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. When she is discovered, the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. Interestingly, Jesus can feel that power has gone out from him, and he asks who's touched his clothes. Although the healing power of Jesus is sought by many, Jesus' powers of discernment are questioned. First by his disciples, who said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" And later it is people at Jairus' house where Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Each time, Jesus reduced the cloud of negativity before he proceeded. He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And then he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. Jesus sent the people away because it's important that those he would help are able to focus on their belief that he can make them well. He said to the woman, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." And while he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter's dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." Now, these statements about belief are carefully placed at the center of the story, resting like a clutch of eggs in the nest. Yet even as belief is brooded so carefully, it is touch that provides a pathway for healing power. The woman touched Jesus' cloak. The man asked Jesus to lay hands on the girl and make her well. And when Jesus met her, he took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. Now, just as touch is necessary to healing, it is also by touch that one may be made unclean. The people coming from Jairus' house assumed Jesus would not wish to be in the house made unclean by contact with a dead body. Similarly, the poor woman who spent everything she had seeking a cure was trembling in fear not only for respect of Jesus, but since her bleeding had rendered her unclean for 12 years. She was culturally bound to the margins, isolated, untouched, unloved, and unable to bear a child. Then, through a daring act of faith, she was made well and miraculously connected with the girl who was born in the year the hemorrhage began and was made well the same day. A spiritual daughter who will soon come into her own powers of procreation. These are powers that reach through millennia and across cultures to heal the world. Even though these ailments may be healed today with contemporary medical techniques, the powers continue to nest together in ways that are deep and mysterious. And they also continue to find opposition and constraint through mechanisms in the culture. Consider Britney Spears. She is now 38 years old, and she has tremendous creative power and earnings. And she's seeking freedom from a conservatorship which was made permanent more than 12 years ago. This conservatorship has legally bound her so that the control over her health care and finances is all given over to her father, who also opposes her desire to have a child. Wesley Morris said, "The idea that people could look at that and only see a crazy person, well, that just tells me what a vulturous society she was working with to begin with." Jesus, take her hand and say, "Little girl, get up."